Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Jaguar, and this is my playbook trade for January 16th of 2020. And today we're going to look at a trade that I made in crude oil, and this was a overnight high breakout. So you can see here on the screen, we have these blue lines here is actually my initial balance lines. And you can see, obviously, I'm not in the market yet, and I really wasn't looking for an IB high breakout today. The reason being is that I don't know if it might be a little hard to see down here in the bottom corner of the screen, but it's 10 o'clock in the morning at this time. So crude's initial balance from 9 a.m. Eastern to 10 a.m. Eastern. So the IB high has just gone in. So I'm not as convicted in these trades where, let's just imagine this was 9:59 or 9:58 in the morning. We'd still be making the IB high here. So, it's not as, just because that line is there, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the most important level in the market. And before, I used to make the mistake of overemphasizing what the IB meant. So, where I'm looking to enter here, or where I'm looking for a breakout from, is actually 58.44. That was the overnight high of the previous session. And so you could see pretty much this gray line for the stock zone here, the upper portion of the stock zone is about 44. And so I want to see price move above that before I want to enter. So I'm going to press play here, and you can see we're starting to get a pop here from the IB, and then that actually is the pop. So now from this level, from this point, I know that we've surpassed the 44 level, traded up to I think 47 there, and we have this pop. And so what I want to show on this footprint bar is when you have the pop, what I'm talking about when I say pop is I mean that dramatic fast movement. As we broke this high here, that kind of dramatic pace and that fast movement. You can see that by the lower volume area. See if we have the 0 by 82, 1 by 48, which I know actually they're diagonal, so it's 0 by 48, 1 by 55. But for the purposes of this video and what we're discussing right now, let's just look at this as individual price levels. And so you could see that there's not very much volume that went in here. We just moved right away from those prices. So that actually is a good indicator, that a breakout is valid. I'm looking for a pop pretty much any time that I'm trading breakout. An ideal scenario is when we get a pop. So here, what I like about this is there's volume going in at the highs. And so you want to see volume come into the highs. Eventually, I'd like to see this VPOC shift up here. That would be a really positive sign. And, also my expectation is that most of the time, not all the time, we come back and we retest this area which we broke out from. You'll see this very often in the ES. Sometimes crude oil will just, continue to go. But a lot of times in the S&P, you will see us retest the area in which the pop, quote unquote, occurred. So here, now I'm interested in getting in. So I know there's only a couple seconds after the IB, and you might be wondering, why didn't I just get in here? The overnight high I just thought was more of a key level. When I'm looking to trade breakouts, especially in crude, I'm looking for levels that line up, either from the overnight session or from the previous day's session, or just something a little bit more, just a little bit more than what's going on today. So I'm not trying to look at just the context of the market conditions today. I'm trying to look at how we have synergized with previous levels in the markets. So I'm trying to look at the most highest quality breakout setups, not just every breakout, because I've stumbled down that bad path of trying to trade all the breakouts, and that's just not, at least for me, that just doesn't work very well. So let's go ahead and press play here. Now I'm interested in getting in already, so I want to point that out. And so I'm looking for price to retest these levels. However, I'm watching Bookmap here at the same time, and I'm seeing we're putting volume in here at the highs. So I actually am about to get in here just in a couple seconds. And there, that's where I entered at. So now I'm involved. And so the first thing I want to talk about here is my stop loss. So I have a mechanical stop loss just based on my ATM strategy. When I say mechanical, I just mean it's arbitrary in a sense, where there's not context based in my stop. However, most of the time what I'll do is I'll leave my arbitrary stop just where it's at, and a lot of times mentally I'll take myself out before that if there's a context stop that makes sense mentally. However, in this trade, this stop is actually at the perfect location. So like I said, I'm expecting this area that we popped from to get retested. So as we trade down into this level, if we retest and trade down in this level, I want to have a stop behind the last point of high volume that we broke out from. So I know I've discussed that a little bit in some other videos, and I'm gonna continue to as long as that continues to be my strategy, I'm gonna continue to have that theme. So I'll have more explanation on that moving forward. But I want my stop below the ledge that we kind of popped from. So this is actually perfect placement for my stop. So I can't take a closer mental stop. That's actually, I'm gonna have to respect that stop loss and keep that there. So if we fast forward in this trade, I actually came, my stop was actually close to getting tested. See, I fast forward about a minute here, and I was pretty nervous at this point, actually, because, Crude can have some pretty dramatic sweeps. And at this point, I'm thinking, okay, well, it's a decent chance that I get stopped out here. But that's the correct location for my stop. My stop is also at the invalidation point of this trade in my mind. So this stop actually held. We filled in this area that we popped from. You see, we're adding a little bit more of just volume in this area. We're adding a little bit of volume to this area, and we're gonna see this start to press up. And one thing that I want to mention too is that you can see the VPOC of this bar did shift to the highs. When we first started looking at this video, the VPOC was down here, and it did shift higher. So again, in a breakout, a good sign is when the VPOC is at the top of the bar. If we are trading a lot of volume at the highs, that's actually a good sign that the breakout is likely to work. So it's the same concept as if this was the entire day's session, where we'll talk about a review with FT that, a trending market and it had a shifting VPOC to the highs throughout the entire day. Well, if you're looking at just the individual bar, pretty much the same concept applies, where if you have a shifting VPOC to the highs, we're kind of likely to go take out those highs. So the next area, after I came back and was retested at this area, we filled in the pop zone a little bit here. Now the next area that I want to see us get through is actually that VPOC. I'll feel a lot more comfortable with this trade as we, push beyond that VPOC of this prior bar. So we're going to trade up here. And I don't want to fast forward yet because you're going to see a little pop here again in the market. Okay, see right there? See, we did 6 by 11 at that VPOC. So that was a highly traded zone originally, but here we only traded 6 by 11 there. So in my mind here with this trade now, as sellers were pressing down, you can see a lot of volume came in to counteract those sellers. Now that we're moving higher, there's not sellers coming in. So I'm thinking buyers are in control here now again. Even though this is not that much volume on this bar, this particular bar, I'm looking at 10,000 volume bars. So this bar is only 13% done, but it's already appearing that buyers are in control here. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit more. You can see the VPOC shifting to the highs there again. That's a good sign, like I said. And I'm gonna, I'm gonna get my first target here. So my initial scale out is just 10 ticks. So I'm gonna fast forward beyond that as well. And let's talk about my second order here in the market. So I did have it at 71. 71 was a swing high from a couple days back. It was actually 72, and I was looking to get filled in front of that. But the important thing about 44, which I'll show you guys real quick here. This is a 30-minute chart, so this is actually the 17th now. So I know none of this is really pertinent to this trade. But this yellow line here I have at 44, you can see this was the high volume area. And as we surpass this, we're entering into a low volume zone. So you see I've marked 72 and 65. That's because back here on some previous days, we have 72 and 65 as highs here. So I was looking to get an exit on one of those. So let me go back to the video here. And essentially, I'm looking for 65. I thought, we're not really putting in that dramatic pace up. I've been in this trade for 6 minutes. In Crude, that can be a lot of time sometimes, especially on breakouts. So I'm not as convicted that we're going to just, roll through these prices because, 44, 45 was the end of that ledge and, the end of the high volume ledge. And so this area here was actually that low volume valley. So one of two things typically happens when you enter in the low volume. You're either going to slice straight through it and you kind of, travel through it with some quickness, or you find that, not as many people want to participate there and it's a little bit harder to get your fills on stuff. So I was looking at 65 because that was kind of the middle of that valley range. So I'm going to fast forward a bit here again, and you can see we're trading up into the 60s. We got to 61, and what happened at 50, 59, 60, and 61, we had a passive seller on the book, and they were continuing to refresh. Every time we traded up at 60s, we traded at 59. They just continued to refresh, and I'm seeing on Bookmap there's all this size here seems to be or the absorption seems to be from the same seller. So I'm becoming a little bit concerned that we're going to concerned if we're going to make it to the next level. Now I'm trying to give my position as long as possible to work, but you can see on this bar the VPOC didn't shift higher here. We might be running out of momentum. There's just a couple of things that not so much of numerical things that I can really derive that's saying we lost momentum, but as I'm looking at Bookmap, I just have the feeling in which we've lost momentum. And so I'm looking at the passive seller come in and really hold that area, and so I'm losing conviction in the trade. So fast forward here a little bit, and I'm about to get out here just in a couple seconds there. I exited right there. So I exited based on the fact that we had the passive seller come in and they were not leaving. And so if we fast forward here a little bit, let me just show you guys. I brought Bookmap down in this video here. So at 58.60, we had a layer of high volume, a level of high volume, and we traded away from it. It came back in there. We traded up to it, and it's just that seller stayed strong there. And so I exited, around here, and you can see even when we went to go retest the area again, that 60 came back in. So, it went from this buy side dominance to now more of a neutral state, but it was a neutral state as far as the delta went. But on the passive side, it was a seller getting filled. So it made me, not want to be in the trade anymore. And if we go on, fast forward here a little bit more, that was actually the top for the next hour in the market. We came back down and we went and tested my original stop in this trade. So it wasn't something I wanted to hold through. To me, this was a perfect exit for me. Ideally, I would have got my target, but as an alternative, when I have to, step in and manually handle my trade, that was a perfect scenario for me. So that's my playbook trade for today. Sorry for running a little bit long on this video, but I wanted to just get all that out there and clear. So hopefully if you guys have any questions, just send a question in the thread, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.